Hello, dear viewers. Welcome to wonderful Herceg-Novi and welcome to Comic Book in the Bottle. My name is Jovan Subotic, and I'm one of the three organizers of the Herceg-Novi Comic Book Festival. It's been going on for 18 years and has had some amazing artists visiting, and we have the pleasure of having one of them here with me tonight. One of my greatest friends, a guy whom we like here in Herceg-Novi, somebody who is an Emmy Award-winning artist, say that, somebody who's done comic books, movies, music videos, and whatnot, the great William Simpson. Welcome, William.
Wow, I love it. I like being called great.
I know.
That's so cool.
Try to be so formal.
Nobody else calls me great at home.
All of our conversations are quite informal. But thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for going live, going online, and speaking about a little bit more about who's William Simpson, who's the guy who did all this wonderful comic book and movie work, and what inspires you, what pushes you to go forward with your own project, with feature films, with comic books, etc. So, in a sense, I'd like to know what William Simpson, stranded on a deserted island, thinks about. What are the things that he'd be missing in that illustration, and what are your favorite movies, your favorite comic books, your favorite music. I'm sure that many of our fans would enjoy some sort of information regarding that. So welcome again to Herceg-Novi, a town that's been very much a second home to you recently.
Thank you so much, Jovan. I mean, it is that feeling every time that I come here that it's like, you get out, you smell the air, and you go, oh gosh, I'm back, I'm home. And it's really nice. This place is just the best. I was just wondering, if I'm stuck on a deserted island, did I accidentally get there, or did somebody deliberately put me there to get me out of the way? It's kind of like, whoa, what am I doing here? Which is worrying. Because I know you guys have your plans for everything, so I'm thinking Jovan has put me on a deserted island.
If that happens, I would have to go with plan B or plan C for our festival and everything we do here. So that's not the plan so far.
Okay, well then that's good.
How about William Simpson and the best movies of your life? I mean, something that inspires you, something that's special to you. Because you do so much, and you've shared so much with us, but what really inspires you? What got you into this visual art world?
See, movies are a really big thing with me because all my life I spent watching films. My mum used to be a great film watcher, and on a Saturday afternoon we'd watch westerns, we'd watch film noir, detective stuff, we'd watch anything. And then later in the evening, of course, BBC Two used to show, in Britain, it would show a lot of European films and so on. So in my life, as I gradually grew up, my taste started to shift and so on, but it was always... It's funny because I used to do write-ups on films that I would get to see at the cinema. And it became kind of interesting because all my friends are film critics. Not all my friends are film critics. I have more friends than just the film critics, but my film critic friends would always be tearing films apart. They would rip them to shreds. And the thing is, I'd be sitting there thinking to myself, but I actually enjoyed this. I got a terrible reputation for enjoying all sorts of rubbish. But the point was, I did. Because for me, films were... It didn't matter what genre it was, as long as the film fulfilled what it was meant to do. So it's like a comedy had to be funny. A drama had to be dramatic. A Western usually had to be somewhere way out west. A detective story had to have something to detect and some kind of crazy murder in there somewhere. And horror films had to scare the hell out of me. It's like... That's all. They can be low budget, they can be big budget. I don't care as long as they deliver the story that they're meant to do. So, so growing up, a lot of my stuff would have been American Hollywood movies. I would have seen a lot of stuff, and it covered everything. I mean, even the craziest bad science fiction. That lovely period where B-movie science fiction was the best thing. I mean, it's like one of my all-time favorite films would have been The Thing, John Carpenter's The
Sure.
Thing, which to me is still a brilliant watch. It's still a fantastic. But do you remember the original Thing, The Thing from Another World?
No, I've heard about it, of course. I've seen bits and pieces of it. I've never sat down and watched it. But John Carpenter thing, to this day, it might be the scariest movie for me.
It still is, yeah.
Watched it at a young age, and I don't want to rewatch it.
Oh God, I remember that. It was funny. I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and they were telling me that the film that had come out just before The Thing was E.T., where it was all friendly aliens.
Yes.
It was like really nice aliens. This is what we were being led to believe in, friendly aliens. And when John Carpenter's The Thing came out, it scared the hell out of us. And I saw it in the cinema, and it was so freaky. And I still thought, this is a fantastic film. And then it got a terrible, terrible flack for years. I mean, it was something that gradually became the cult classic.
Sure.
That it's now actually beyond cult classic. It's in mainstream classic movies. It's fantastic. But the original, The Thing from Another World, black and white movie, and I remember when I saw that, and one of the things that's wonderful in it is the dialogue between all the characters. It's overlapping dialogue, but it's still, the overlap is so slight that it's continuing, and it's so funny because that's brilliant, and all of the events that take place are brilliant. And then when you see Desi Arnaz Jr., I think it is, as The Thing, and it's basically, he's a giant walking vegetable, supposedly. I mean, this was the whole thing. It's vegetable life, and it is hilarious. It's brilliant. It's still brilliant. But you do have to chuckle to yourself when you're watching it when he appears, even though he does all these terrible things. But it's just because when you know that you've seen the John Carpenter The Thing, and that film has absolutely got at you. It is wicked. Do you remember the Huskies in it?
Of course.
Oh,
of course.
my
But
God.
they are the principal thing.
Absolutely awful. It's brilliant, brilliant film. But anyway, I was just thinking about that.
Great stuff. It so resembles the beginnings of me and my generation, and a little bit older than me in ex-Yugoslavia in the 80s. You had this couple of TV channels, and that's all you had. So you actually sat down and waited for that Saturday night film or a Friday night film or a Thursday night TV show. That's all you watched, but you enjoyed it, and you watched what was on TV, and all of us watched all these movies.
Absolutely.
Because of it, because
Isn't it funny how nowadays we have every channel under the sun?
Yeah.
And they repeat. They're constantly repeating the same films over and over and over again. And you suddenly realize, wait a minute, if I look at all these channels, at a different hour, it's the same film I watched on that channel and so on. And you're thinking, well, what does this mean? There's only like 100 films, and that's all we're watching, all we're allowed to see, all that's rotating, which is kind of like that. Now, I guess the amount is much greater than that, but still it feels like that. When we only had, 4 channels in the UK, it was really interesting because films became a special event that made you really want to watch it. Now, all genres. And the thing was, like your favorite actor or favorite actress would be in certain films, and that's why you would watch them. Oh, and it would be a movie from their past or a movie from, an up-and-coming one. And it was always, I don't know, I think we seem to see more quality in that time period, because now we've just got everything.
Sure.
And everything doesn't mean that you watch anything. Anything kind of makes you kind of snowblind. The fact that you can now switch something onto pause or save it. You couldn't do that in the past.
You had to be on time, first
Absolutely.
of all. You had to be, and usually you hung out with your family, you spent some time together. And, I guess in those days, would you say this? You'd have to have quality to make it to TV. And so you basically watched a lot of good stuff, not just anything.
Absolutely.
was shown. When it comes to you mentioned your favorite, actor and actress. in the 80s, the ex-Yugoslavia is a poster country for, we watched everything from Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger. We were part of it, of the
Oh
duo.
yeah.
What about you? Are a man who's through your work encountered various actors, actresses. Um, would you speak about that? Who made an impression on you? Who do you find an amazing artist, somebody who's creating content that's not creating anybody else, like famous artist, famous actor, famous director, somebody brilliant that really deserves even more attention.
Um, one of the first big features that I worked on, and it was a low budget big feature, was with Richard Attenborough, Sir Richard Attenborough, Lord Richard Attenborough, sorry, Lord Richard Attenborough.
Yes,
And Richard Attenborough had been in so many films that I'd watched over my life and directed some really incredible things. This is the man that did Gandhi. He directed Gandhi, and it was a phenomenal piece of work. He was in a brilliant film, oh my gosh, with James Stewart, The Flight of the Phoenix. Do you remember that? It's one where these guys take off from an oil well and end up crashing in the desert, and it's all of the people that are on board this plane, and it's big Dakota Transporter or something, and it's probably the wrong plane. So anybody that's a plane aficionado, forgive me for getting it wrong. Anyway, the thing is that, and there's Hardy Kruger in it, I think. Is it Hardy Kruger? Anyway, plane crashes in the desert, and these guys are all going to die. They have to find their way out of the desert. Richard Attenborough is one of the characters in that, and I mean, he's excellent. He's the guy that boosts up the hero when the hero's like turning to the bottle. He's the guy that keeps him, correct. And as I say, he then created Gandhi, where he got big awards for Gandhi, and it was amazing. Well, I worked with him on his last feature film, and I mean it's a bit of a sad story, I guess, because his family had been destroyed in the tsunami out in Thailand. I think he lost 2 granddaughters or something, and a daughter or a son or whatever. But the point was, it was like this was a movie that was helping him keep going and so on. Now, he was wonderful to work with. It's a strange little film called Closing the Ring, which is about an actual American plane in the Second World War crashed into Belfast's Cave Hill, which is like our one famous hill in Belfast. And it was a foggy night or a rainy night or something. It could be a rainy night because it's Belfast. Anyway, the thing was, the plane crashed into the mountain, and there's a guy in the plane. He's actually the tail gunner of the plane, who is dying when this young guy finds him, and he's got his ring on his finger that he wants to get given to his girlfriend. Please get this ring back to Jenny or whatever it is, and then dies. So the whole film is about years later, how this ring ends up being returned to the much older lady, and that was Shirley MacLaine, ended up being the older version, and but Richard Attenborough was wonderful to work with. This was Uncle Dickie. He was wonderful. He really was.
These are great stories. This is gold for us.
Oh well, it's actually there's so much about that film, I can tell you. But anyway, the thing is, you had asked me like somebody who had impressed me really, yes, as like, I mean, I've met a bunch of actors and they've all been really interesting, and I've been tongue-tied sometimes whenever I've met them, because it is the way it is. I'm a fan, just the way everybody else is. And so it's funny, when you're working on a film, you're much more kind of easygoing about it, and you're rubbing shoulders with people. And it's like I was explaining earlier on today about, I used to bump into Nikolai Coster-Waldau from Game of Thrones. He was Jaime Lannister. And I always seemed to bump into him in the kitchen of the area that we were working in, because we had a separate section, and there was 2 big boardroom tables, and they used to go in and use one of them for voice coaching and so on. So I would meet Nikolai when he'd be over for voice coaching or something. And he always seemed to come into the kitchen when I was squeezing oranges. And I was like, do you want my oranges? Anyway, he was always brilliant, wonderfully polite human being, lovely person to talk to. And it was just the weirdness of your job, because you walk back into your office and get on with your drawing. And, you know, the next minute you'd be in and somebody else would have appeared. So anyway, the thing I was thinking about, because it blew me away when I saw it. I was working on a film called Your Highness, which is a really silly, wonderful, stupid medieval fantasy thing with James Franco and Danny McBride and Natalie Portman and a few other brilliant actors that were dotted about there. But I occasionally would get asked in to see some of the rushes. And this just doesn't happen. It happened with Richard Attenborough. He invited me in to see rushes that were taking place. A storyboard artist never gets invited in to see rushes, but I did. And David Gordon Green and Danny McBride had got me in, and they were showing me some stuff. And Natalie Portman, this wonderful, small woman, this amazing human being, this actress, is standing there, and David's giving her voice cues, and it's like something like 12 different voice cues. She's in the set, and they say, right, we want you to be sad here, and Natalie would do sad, and then they would say, now we want you to be irate, and Natalie would do the same lines, irate. Then it would be, you know, we want you to be really angry, and she would do the lines really angry. We want you to be sarcastic, she'd do sarcasm. And this woman, I saw her change like that. Amazing she stuff. Was phenomenal. I didn't realize how good actors could be until I saw her do these 12 different versions, one after the other, on a prompt that was a voice prompt. The woman's phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. The worst thing is we only ever see one version. Yeah. We see the version they present to us on TV or in a film. And yet, because of that, I know that they could have chosen any different version to do, because this woman is amazing. So there you go. And
Natalie Portman, I mean, we all know her from the movie screens when she was little.
Oh, Leon.
And then now, and that's sort of a person that you want to hear good things about.
Yes.
It's amazing that, because she is amazing. It's a great actress, and then you hear these kind of stories, and it's pretty good, and you want them to be a good person or a quality person even outside the movies, of course.
No, she is amazing. And it's interesting though, because I agree with what you say. One of the things that you don't want to have happen is that you meet somebody who's kind of your, some kind of god to you, and they turn out to be the devil. So the nice thing is when they actually turn out to be wonderful. And I've met a lot of really wonderful people. There's only been a few that have been devils, and I'm not going to talk about that.
What about comic books? Let's stick to the same kind of conversation, but when it comes to comic books and comic books creators.
I will do, but I haven't told you my favorite films yet, though.
No.
And I'm not, you can come back to that. Because I was just thinking, though I went off talking about the thing.
Of course.
I mean, it was just, when I've been asked about this before, I mean, there are a couple of other films that I was thinking, well, if I was on a desert island, what would I wish to see? I don't know what the hell I'm going to play them on, but anyway. So the thing is, sorry, you're going to say comic books. Are you wanting then to know what I favoured or what? Or artists
creators.
Or whatever.
So that's my idea. Is we'll come back to the
titles
I know. Or the best movies.
This is why I was wondering.
But let's talk about comic book creators and people here in Herzegovina. We've seen a lot of them. We've seen a lot of people who are your friends, and of course you've made some new and old friends here. What about comic book industry? Where do you see the future? Who are your favorite people to cooperate with? What's the future for comic books? We're going online? We're still sticking to the printed comic book? What's the storytelling these days? I mean, we're all fans.
Yeah.
But storytelling, the good storytelling today, it's, I'm not going to say it's hard to find, but harder than previous years.
It's pretty scary in some respects, because I agree. I mean, I know I'm not reading enough to actually say who's doing the best creations, but right, okay, I'm old school when it comes to comics. It's stuff that I grew up loving as a child, and then pardon me, got into working on. But the thing was, way back, I remember there was an artist called Don Lawrence who did an amazing series called The Trigon Empire, or The Trigon Empire, for Look and Learn, which was a British magazine that was more like an educational magazine.
Published last year here in the region.
Absolutely.
From a Serbian publisher.
Right. And there's like six
wonderful,
volumes or something
work.
now, or something
We,
like that.
we,
isn't there?
we have seen 2 so far.
Okay, there's more to come. But the point was that Don Lawrence, he went on to do Storm in
course, yes.
the Netherlands, wasn't it? He was phenomenal. Whenever I was a child, you see, I saw the funnies first. It was like the comics back home, the Dandy and Beano, which did like Biffo the Bear or something, or Desperate Dan was in something. It was all just fun characters who, there'd be 1-page or 2-page stories where there'd always be a conclusion. It was always slapstick and so on. And as a little kid, that's what we were looking at. It was the funnies. But it didn't take me very long to find. It was like Commando Comics and War Picture Library, Arius Picture Library, and stuff like this, which were little mini books.
Sure.
Yeah, do you know those?
Of course.
And the thing that was lovely about those was they seemed to have some amazing attention to the detail of weaponry and stuff.
Yes.
I mean, stories about tanks, you would recognize the tank and it would be correct. The weapons would be correct. The Bren gun would be correct. The Schmeiser would be correct. All these things. And that was that struck me because again, at that stage, and I'm still really young and I'm watching lots of movies. So the comparison with the movies to these stories, which again, always a good conclusion at the end. And it was always friendly, chums together, or somebody went to the firing squad. That was it. It was always a good conclusion. But the thing was, they were great stories. They were beautifully drawn. And the thing was, I was looking at European artists in there that I didn't know. I didn't realize they were European artists. They were just artists. Because even then, you never thought outside of the box too much. Because you could read them in the country, they're probably from the country, but that's not strictly true. And there was guys, it's funny, there was artists in there who influenced then other friends of mine who became like 2000 AD artists and so on. And it was so interesting when you suddenly realized the style similarities and stuff, so they learned from these guys. But the thing was, when I saw Don Lawrence's work, now, this is because my dad thought we should get something a little bit more educational than just comic strips. Little did he realize that when he bought me Look and Learn, even though there was all these good articles and stuff in there, science articles and stuff, and adventures, into the frozen wastes, there was something like 6 pages of comic strip at the back, and 2 of the pages were always Don Lawrence's stuff. And I suddenly went, what, this is comics? Because the thing about it was like Renaissance painting, in front of you. Because, of course, the other thing...
Exactly what you're talking about.
While I was reading comics and getting into all that, my mum was getting me art books. So, on one hand, I was looking at Michelangelo and Da Vinci and Titian and stuff like this. And on the other hand, I'm reading, War Picture Library and seeing then Don Lawrence's stuff. And, of course, Don Lawrence was... Oh, geez, he was so amazing. And it was like the Roman Empire in space. So it was like all these things that I love, science fiction and ancient cultures, and that's what it was like, and it was beautiful. Beautiful. I mean, you know what it's like now because you've seen the books, right?
I know exactly what you're talking about because, again, coming up to the old country, the ex-Yugoslavia, we had so many comic books on our newsstands. We could buy so much stuff. And we had the monthly magazines, which would always coincidentally feature a couple of pages of Don Lawrence. So you would read Storm like over a 2-year period, 2 pages at a time.
That's exactly right.
So you had this magazine with some cheap papers, so newspaper quality. However, the 2 pages were inside in full color, thick paper, and you just wait for Storm. And yeah, that's exactly how it was. So today my collection features some of these magazines, and I love it.
Do you know what this is really interesting because we love those comics. I mean, I know the ones that I've got in my bags at home, and they're you know, they smell of old comics,
Sure.
and they were printed on really shitty paper, and they have sorry, but it's
Uh,
true that they were not luxurious paper. And the thing is that they were. The colors would merge into the paper, you
yes.
know. So when the colorists used to have to work on them, you know, to balance stuff, they would be brighter on their own palette, but not necessarily on the printed page. And of course, when they started reprinting that stuff on glossier paper, suddenly the colors are like, "Argh, you're killing me. My eyes are going blind with this color. Anyway, the thing was, in a way, that's so like when I was a kid looking at black and white films. I have this conversation sometimes with my son, who is, you know, he's a grown-up chap working, and he won't watch black and white movies. And I'm thinking, why would you watch black and white movies? There's some incredible films, incredible stories. Why would you not watch these? Oh no, they look so old, and he won't do it. And yet, the thing is, it's like, when people come along and say to me things like, "Oh, you know, you missed out on this thing or that thing," you know, "Oh man, it was so cool and you've missed it," and yet I'm able to think to myself, "But you haven't seen all of the stuff that I've seen, because television used to show us every genre, every type." Stuff that was like from Charlie Chaplin through to whatever was the big movie of the day, Logan's Run, something like that at the time. You know, and you would end up seeing like stuff like Spartacus or Ben-Hur on TV. And the other bit, of course, that was interesting about that is when you originally saw them, you know, it was TV screen size, and you were seeing this thing called pan and scan, which people really don't have to suffer with today, because DVDs are widescreen a lot of the time, and our televisions are now widescreen. So the differentiation in there, when you put a film on, you know, you may have a little bit of black on top, a little bit of black on the bottom, but the point is, it's all normal for us now. Back in the day I was growing up, it was like you were watching everything on a square box. So if you have two people in a scene, you didn't realize the two people were in the same scene, because the camera would go from one person to the other person, and then back to the other person because he's speaking, and then back to this person because they're speaking. And you just accepted this as normal filmmaking. And then you would hear about how these were, you know, classic movies and so on. But well, I don't see anything classic about that. And I remember when we first started to see on, again, British BBC Two, late at night, they started to show movies in their proper aspect ratio. Actually, some of them were a little bit less because they, I guess they were only pushing so far. But I remember when I finally got to see Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, proper widescreen on TV.
Oh, great film.
Or when I first saw like A Fistful of Dollars, proper widescreen on TV, and you suddenly realized that Clint Eastwood was in the edge of the screen, you know. Eli Wallach was at the other edge of the screen or something, and it was probably the band early then, and Lee Van Cleef, but all three of them were in the shot, and you were listening to the build up of the music and the tension, and all three of them are in the shot. You hadn't seen it like that before. Before it was like, I'm looking at Clint, I'm looking at Eli Wallach, I'm looking at Lee Van Cleef, and your camera was moving about all over the place. So it became really interesting watching movies, and of course, your kids don't understand this. They don't understand the wealth that you had to go through of viewing. But the thing that I love about that was, I remember when I started to get DVDs, was because it was definitely DVDs more than video. When I started to get DVDs, you were seeing them all in their proper aspect ratio. And the thing that was great about it was, you were buying up lots of old films that you knew from television, but now you were seeing them the way they were meant to be seen. And suddenly, all of these things, it was like a whole new world of watching. Even though the film was vaguely familiar, now it was new and it was fresh and it was wide.
Always widescreen, and I never purchased the full screen edition of
Oh
anything.
man, you never
ever,
saw this.
ever.
Well, you see, one of my favorite movies.
Ah.
The first time I saw it, it was television screen size.
There we go. Maybe we can include a third point, and then we'll come back to the two cents.
Okay, because that was it. Sorry, the other thing was you were asking about the comic stuff because
Sure.
I was going to say one of the things that always drew me to comics was artists. So there you go, and it was obviously the story is essential, but it was art over story initially, because you could still have a story that was just okay, but if the artwork was stunning, I mean, you were blown away by it.
One of the most amazing stories I've heard from you, and I think would be super interesting, and it's directly connected to who William Simpson is and what he thinks about on a deserted island, is the story of your beginnings, of how persistent you were into getting into the business, the great advices or the simple advices that you received that changed your
My
life.
Yeah.
And then at the end, the Daredevil comic book purchase is amazing. So maybe we should touch up on this.
The
It
funny,
never gets
well,
old.
the funny
It's a wonderful
thing,
story.
the funny thing is the Daredevil bit, of course, is almost the first bit that leads to the advice bit. But the thing was, when I started off, I just wanted to make comics. It was always a thing where I was reading other people's comics and loving them. No idea if I could ever do these things, but I was always drawing. And I actually, at that stage, I was probably still out painting landscapes as well. And comic work is a very different thing. I remember actually at school, and one of our exam grades, I did a comic strip for the exam. Actually, that's right. And it was like heavily influenced by other artists whose work I loved at the time. But I wrote this thing and did it as an English literature thing. Mm-hmm. And I got good marks for doing this. And it was a whole bunch of pages of this comic strip of this character traveling through desert wastes and into jungle lands and stuff like that. So I must have been thinking Conan stuff at the time. But anyway, that's right. God, I forgot about that. Anyway, later on, I've done a little bit of art college, and then I'm wandering about the world. I'm the world, which was Belfast. I was out. I was painting landscapes. I was doing portraits, but I was still drawing comics for myself. I remember having completed. I used to take science fiction short stories, sort of some of my favorite stuff. Ray Bradbury work, absolutely brilliant. And I used to try and turn them into a comic strip version. So you're adapting stuff. And the first story I ever completed, and I think it's about 20 pages long, and it's a story called Marionettes Incorporated, which is about a guy who decides he wants to spend a lot more time out. And the wife, well, she's not really wanting him to go out, but he wants to go out. And a friend of his tells him about this company who create another you, which is a marionette, a robot. And he does this. He doesn't tell the wife, of course. He creates the robot, and the robot then he leaves at home while he goes out. So he spends his time going out and about, and then he gets a bit iffy. And then when he comes home, the wife isn't that happy with him. She doesn't seem to be reacting to him the same way, but she still seems happy different times. She seems to be happier the nights that he goes out than the nights when he comes home. And of course, the end of the story is where he finally confronts the fact that the automaton, the marionette, the wife favors the marionette more than she favors him. So, of course, he is going to get the chop. And it's a great story. It's a really brilliant little story. And yes, I've ruined it for everybody. But the point is, it's still worth reading. It's a great book. Anyway, that's a short story. And I drew it, and I got to the end of it, and I'd actually realized all of this stuff works. Each page is kind of the same as the page before. It all works. Now, that's a very difficult thing to achieve when you start off. When you start off, you you know, you're trying so hard to do something and you get really tired and you hate it and then you screw it up and you throw it away and you start again. Anyway, so this was the first one I completed. But I decided I would like to do a comic magazine and I would like to do it myself. And I saw some guys in Belfast, and they had other friends that were into comics as well. So it became a thing where it was a kind of an anthology book, and it was called ZMOC X at the beginning, because of my friend Davy Francis says, "Oh well, it's comics backwards, American style, right? Okay." And we all went, "Yes, Davy, so that'll do fine." And the thing was, I was always into Conan, so I drew a story about a character called Cuchulainn, who was a big Irish insane hero character, very like Slane, or Slania, as they say in Ireland, the character in 2000 AD. And came later, of course. So Cuchulainn was, you know, a real kind of force for me, and I did 3 issues of this comic magazine, this fanzine thing, and had my first ever argument with an editor because I went in one day to get my artwork, which was in the office of this place, because I wanted to make copies and send them off to publishers. And I got in, and this guy said, "No, you can't have those. They belong to us." And I said, "They don't belong to you. You're not even paying for this." You know, and they go, "Yeah, but we're making the comic." "But you're not paying for anything." So I said a few expletives and lifted my comic artwork off the wall and went out, and I thought, well, that's the end of my non-existent comic career. And about 2 months later, I was unemployed, I was going home, and I needed to get some food for my dinner that night, and I stopped in at the little corner shop. And when I say food for my dinner, I'm talking about Ryvita and cheese. That's what I'm having for my dinner. And I'm in the shop, and I've got the Ryvita and cheese set on the counter, but I look over to my right, and there's a stand of comics and magazines, and I see a copy of British Marvel's The Daredevils. It's a Frank Miller cover. It looks great, and I'm looking at it and thinking, oh gosh, The Daredevils, Ryvita and cheese. The Daredevils, Ryvita and cheese. And I buy the bloody Daredevils. I end up buying the comic magazine and not buying the Ryvita and cheese because money is in short supply. And I walk down the road and realize as I get into my little house that I'm in, oh God, I've nothing to eat tonight. And I thought, this is insanity. What have I done? And I thought, well, I can make myself a cup of tea. So I decided I'm putting on the kettle, I'm going to make tea. And I decide, basically, I'm going to devour this comic magazine. I'm going to read everything. Every bit of type on this thing I'm going to read. Because you never do. You don't read the ads. You don't read sometimes the letters, pages and stuff. But the point was, I found myself, the indicia, I was reading everything, and I was going through this thing, and I read the comic stories, and I was reading the ads, and I was reading the letters page, and then I got to a review section at the back. And I'm reading these reviews of other comic magazines and fanzines and stuff, and partway down, it talks, there's a thing, ZMOC. And I go, what? And it says some really interesting art coming out of Northern Ireland, especially the art by William Simpson. And I'm thinking, oh my God, Marvel have liked my artwork. Oh God, this is crazy. And so I bombard Marvel with artwork that's not quite right. I mean, it's stuff that I like, but it wasn't quite right. And I couldn't suss out this, they couldn't suss it out, but they were so helpful. They were wanting to encourage me, which was good, because that meant I had hope. And they said, look, there's something wrong, and we've got to get it fixed. We're going to put you in touch with another artist who may be able to help you. And I said, okay, who is this? And it was this rather unknown artist called David Lloyd, which, oh my God, guy went on to do V for Vendetta with Alan Moore. I mean, he was something. And David had been working with British Marvel at the time. I think he was doing a thing called Night Raven or something. And so I had a phone call with David, and it was brilliant because David goes, okay, what way do you draw? And I said, well, I draw on a table. And he says that, yeah, but do you draw flat or do you draw at a tilt? And I said, oh, I draw flat. And he said, ha ha, that could be the problem. And I said, okay, what do I do? And he said, you've got a drawing board? And I said, yes. And he said, put a telephone directory under it. Lots of people don't know what a telephone directory is anymore, but they were a big book of everybody's telephone numbers. And then he said,
in the old movies.
what? Like my old movies?
No, you see the
You will
phone
see them.
directories the
You
old
will
movies.
see them in old movies. That is true. And he said, no, maybe put 2 telephone directories onto your board, and it'll really help. So I did this, and the next drawings I turned out, Marvel said, yeah, these are starting to look really good, and I thought, what the hell? This is brilliant, because it's like, do you remember the way Michelangelo did the statue of David, so that when you look at it, everything's in proportion. Now you're underneath, you're looking up, the head's in proportion. But he designed it so cleverly that the head's bigger than the way the body is, so that when you look up at it, you're seeing it as if you're looking straight on at it. Amazing man, incredible artist, what a man. Anyway, so that's what I was doing wrong. I mean, my proportions were all out of the, just completely wrong. And he did this with me, and the next thing that happened was that he rang me up one day to say, look, are you interested in doing some work with me? I said, sure, David, what is it? I said, well, I've got this job to do a Knight Rider colouring book. So my first paid job was to pencil a Knight Rider colouring book with, David Hasselhoff and Kit.
Sure.
And David then inked it to make it David Lloyd. And that was the first paying job. And then a little while later, I seemed to get a package. I was in Enniskillen in Ireland at the time, Northern Ireland, and I'm down doing a landscape. I'm sitting, and this is true, in an Irish potato field, painting trees. And I get the post office is up above, and this package comes down, and it's like, you've got a package. And I said, what is it? It's from Warrior. And suddenly, it was like I realized something is going to change here. And I thought, well, I better finish this painting then, because I knew I'd never go back to it. So I sat for the afternoon working on the painting. The package is sitting beside me. I end up taking it up to the house, finally opening it, and it's an invite to work with Warrior on a character called Big Ben, the man with no time for crime. And there's a bundle of warriors that have been sent to me, and a bundle of scripts from Big Ben. And this is from Des Skin. And the thing was, to this day, I still don't know who showed them the work that I was doing. I have no idea. But the fact is, somebody did. It could have been David, it could have been the guys at Marvel, I don't know. Somebody did. And they thought that there was a chance that I would actually be able to do something. So I ended up working on Big Ben, the man with no time for crime, for something like, 7 or 8 issues, until Warrior folded. And that was wild. And then, of course, I was learning how to draw on the job. Yeah. Well, is that what you were wanting? No,
Yeah,
is that the
absolutely.
story?
No, wonderful.
Okay, that's the story.
Wonderful. And
all
here,
true.
it comes back to the earlier question. You get David Lloyd with one of the best advices, or something.
And the simplest.
Exactly, and somebody who was willing to help and
Yeah.
truly, and people at Marvel truly invested in a new artist, trying to get him on the right path and give him a chance to create.
Do you notice, though, I mean, you've seen enough of it with the guys that come to Herzog Novi, but do you notice that a lot of artists are really willing to talk to other artists, to young up-and-coming artists? They don't feel any kind of, fear of, oh my God, they're going to take my job.
I do.
They're just genuinely helpful, because when you see somebody doing something good, you want them to succeed. And I think that's one of the things that's within a lot of artists.
Organizing Comic Book Festival here for 17 years now, I feel a part of the large family, of the comic book family. Now I feel a part of with you guys, because it was very intimidating, and it is still to this day. Talk to you guys about art, about film, about music, because you all know so much. I'm just a fan. But now as a comic book organizer, festival organizer, I witnessed this. I facilitated meetings and helped people get their chances. I knew that a connection there would be between, like, for example, yourself and another artist, and I'd say you really need to meet this guy and discuss a little bit of this and that. And again, people that know about Yugoslavia and what happened here in the 90s, we were a war-torn country with a civil war. The people who work in comic books and love comic books never split. They were always a big family, and to this day they are, and you can see it in Herzegovina. And I don't see the other area of life where people are so willing to help each other, to recommend each other, to give a portion of work, give a chance to earn a wage, and I really love it. That's a whole another universe I discovered with people like yourself and friends that come to Herzegovina, who are just great, talented, but at the same time great people.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I was thinking about that thing that they have a lack of fear of the younger artists coming along. The biggest fears they have are their own.
Sure.
Most artists are afraid of everything. There's the mistakes that they're making, because that's the other thing. They can see what's wrong with their own work. And it's a big thing to allow a piece of work to get out there into the world. And yet they do it page after page after page, and they're flipping brilliant at it.
I have been able, and especially during the last year, to interview a lot of my good friends and known comic book artists at various festivals in the region. I always, speak in Italian and English. I always go and voluntarily, help out. And this is the one thing that it seems to be common to everybody, even Milo Manara. Everybody looks and everybody knows their mistakes. And when asked what's the key to your success, I usually get the same answer. Never being satisfied, completely satisfied with what you've done. You see the mistakes. Of course, you also know that the page is good enough to go to print.
Absolutely.
But then you go to the next page and you try to fix the mistakes and try to be better and so on and so on.
Which is amazing, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It truly is. What about another aspect? What about music? I know that you love music. You're great, you understand music. You like to sing. You like to go to concerts.
I force it on you when I'm walking the street. It's very bad.
It's a common theme also. Do you like to listen to music while drawing? What do you listen while you're drawing? Does it inspire you? Does it bother you? Does it?
Okay, with the drawing thing, half the time I would be watching films while I'm drawing, and the other half of the time I would be listening to music. It just depends what mood I'm actually in. But I mean, in my car, it's music all the time.
Sure.
I get very annoyed if somebody has changed my settings or something, and it's like, what? Wait a minute, I'm not hearing my music. Anyway, but the other thing is that, I grew up with lots of music and love it, but I can't listen to radio most of the time. You know the whole thing where it's broken into with some crazy DJ saying a load of rubbish or talking about the price of milk or whatever. I can't do it. It's like I used to listen to Radio 1 way back, and you listen to the banter and and you were happy to hear the records. But now it's like, I'm so glad that CDs had come along whenever they did, and I was able to I listened to tapes in my car, then I listened to CDs in my car, and now, of course, it tends to be whatever I had on iTunes is plugged into the car, and I get very annoyed at that sometimes, because sometimes it just doesn't feed me anything new,
Sure.
because it's not even giving me my library. It's only given me part of my library, and you just get frustrated. But I loved listening to full albums. I loved the days of records when I would put on an album and you knew what that side of an album was. You would listen to the full 25 minutes or something, and you'd turn it over, and you went through that process, that lovely process of getting up off your butt and going over to the record player and lifting off the arm and turning the record over and then placing it back, going to sit down again. And you'd hear that crackle, crackle, crackle before the first track starts, and then you would get into a whole album. It's like when you oh my God, I remember when I heard Jimi Hendrix's Electric Ladyland, big double album with incredibly innovative stuff that he was doing at the time, and how track led into track led into track, which was so different from a lot of the other albums that I'd been listening to. So there was this flow through the whole album, and oh my God, it was so good. And it's still better than the digital version that was created, where it would cut off a track and you would hear the end of the track starting the beginning of the next track. So irritating, because when you've got it on vinyl, it just slipped through beautifully. And it would, you would hear the sound going down, and then you would hear the sound building up, and there was no break. What a state of mind you got into. So I mean, I loved things like that. I remember one night trapped in a room with a big Alsatian dog. My friends, we had been at this party. My friends are all sleeping about the place. I'm sitting beside a record player, but I can't just reach it. It's that little bit too far away from me. And there's a giant Alsatian called Brenda. It's in Ireland. Brenda the dog, who's sitting looking at me. And anytime I make a movement, she goes, "Grrr." So I spent the whole of the night, whatever, it was a short night, believe me, but the whole of that part of the night listening to one side of Dark Side of the Moon, the Pink Floyd track. But one side, it just played through, the arm came back, started again, played through. So you were having these 25-minute segments or something, and if you tried to go and change it, the dog would growl. So you just sat in your chair and thought, this is it, I'm stuck here.
Oh, what a great album. It
is a great album. The thing was, I was aware of one side of it more than the other. The side with money on it, ding, 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 ding. Oh my God, it was superb. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, it is a thing that, like, I remember, a lot of the time if I'm working on something, and specifically genre stuff, it's like, if I'm looking at science fiction, I'll watch science fiction movies, I'll have them on because of the fact that I want to immerse myself in that, so that when I'm working, when I'm drawing, I am influenced by stuff, but also new stuff you're adding to things. And when I was working on horror stuff, of course, I had to watch lots of horror. It was like I just needed to get into that. But then a lot of the time the music would break this stuff up. I would get a chance to just put on albums, because sometimes you just need it relief. You just needed to have something. Yes. And music is phenomenal. I mean, Nicola, your great friend Nicola, is amazing. I remember the first time I was here and his band was playing. And of course, the greatest thing was I was walking into a band that was playing Rolling Stones tracks and the Doors tracks and punk tracks. He was heavily into Stranglers and his all his punk stuff. And it was phenomenal, because I thought, well, I'm in the best place. This is so good.
Which has been proven more and over.
Absolutely. And then, of course, whenever you guys took me to Got Pub, and the fact that they played rock music all the time, and it was just the best place for me to be. I thought I'd stepped into my world.
Yeah, there was a question online a couple of days ago, maybe a week ago, in a group of locals, asking, is there a place in Herzegovina where I can just go and listen to some jamming, just rock and roll, and just, I want to have a beer, sit by myself and just listen to some rock. And actually, the only answer in Herzegovina is the God Pub. Yes. That's the place, and that's where we're gonna head tomorrow. So
excellent.
Excellent. Yes, we cannot miss it and skip it. And those are our great friends and people who support our festival and that have a guest of honor, official guest of honor, which is William Simpson.
Of course, and oh my God, I love that. I still have the tankard at home,
and the picture on the wall.
Absolutely, but it's the atmosphere there is kind of my atmosphere. I mean, and now of course it goes through different eras of music, whenever depending on who's on the bar and so on. But it's still brilliant. It's such a great place to be, and so my whole life has always had this balance of stuff. The funny thing is, though, I still seem to listen to a lot of bands that I used to listen to. They still come onto my playlist, and I still would favour them when I'm going to listen to things. Yeah. So sadly, I'm not as up to date with music as I should be, but that's only because there's so much great music that I've always listened to, and is still out there, and you're still wanting to discover tracks that were done by artists that you loved. So yeah, Yeah, I mean it's big. So I was thinking about this actually, and I thought for all of the things that I really like, I mean my pet love at the moment would have been Wolf Alice, who I saw in Belfast playing, and they're absolutely beautiful, great lead singer, beautiful sound, love them. But when I thought about it, now in the end I'm going to have a Doors album if I'm on a desert island. And I thought, well, what do I want? And I thought, there's all those great albums, but there's the live album that's a double live album, and it's No One Here Gets Out Alive. And they've got a fantastic version of When the Music's Over on there.
Oh, yes.
And I'm just thinking, yeah, I could be morose listening to that, but I could also be really happy listening to that. So there you go.
So
that's a definite, I think.
Would one luxury item that you would, if able to have on a desert island, would that be a record player? Or
Are we not allowed to have that? I mean, because it sounds, well, I mean, what way are we meant to listen to music on this desert island? See, this is the problem. I mean, at least if you had a needle, you could probably sit there and turn the record right.
Sure.
No, that would be terrible. Oh, no, when I was thinking about a luxury item, and nobody had said I couldn't have it. So I thought to myself, well, I'd always like a boat. But they would say, no, you're not having it. Well, give me a submarine then. I want to have my own small submarine that if I'm on this island, I can go out for a little bit and I can look under the water and I can come back. I know he's going to rave and say, no, you're not allowed to have a boat. But I don't care. I don't want any fluffy cushions or any pumped up mattress. I want my sub sitting there. So yeah, I'll stay. It can have a giant chain attached to the island, and I can only have a radius, around the island of a certain amount. That's okay. I just love the idea of getting into something like that and tootling around. That would work.
It's a great answer. How about we come back to the beginning and just like you dropped the name when it comes to the music band, what are the movies and the comic books? We did mention Storm and Don Lawrence.
But again, you see,
when I mentioned all of us who are lovers of pop culture who love this.
Well, you see, the problem with comics is that there are so many comic artists whose work you love, and it's like the whole collection of Barry Windsor Smith's Conan. When he was Barry Smith, bloody brilliant, amazing. Watching a guy progress from being like a Jack Kirby, a clone, within issues he became himself. And when you get to the end, he is a pre-Raphaelite artist. It's the most beautiful stuff. And I still go back and reread that, but also I reread Killraven. Do you know the Killraven with, I think it starts off with an issue that is half Neil Adams and half Howard Chaykin, and it's incredible. Yeah. And then it goes into, I think it might be Herb Trimpe, but there's a few other artists in there. There's Rich Buckler, and then there's also one issue by Gene Colan. Now, Gene Colan's a god to me. I mean, I love Gene Colan's work. I love his Dracula volumes. Oh my God, his Daredevils, beautiful stuff. Amazing artist. And the thing is, then it goes on to Philip Craig Russell, and he's a guy that did Elric, an amazing Elric, but he does Killraven. And it's written by Don McGregor. And I can reread that series over and over and over again. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. The artwork's beautiful, and simple for Philip Craig Russell, because he went on to do the most elaborately beautiful artwork. But it is gorgeous. Yeah, I mean, as I say, I would reread it. So I reread that, and I reread Conan, and I reread Dracula because of Gene Colan. And there's a lot of books I reread. I mean, there's a lot of brilliant comic book stuff. So it's very hard to choose one particular thing. But I do love those Barry Windsor Smith Conans. I think it would have to be that collected volume that has one John Buscema one at the back. I adore those.
I love the choice. I'm quite the same. Like Conan has always a special place in my collection, in my heart. I love everything about Conan. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And I love to read about the writing of the stories, about the times it was written, about the short stories, about the action, about
Do you
It's
remember
just
Red Nails
wonderful.
when they printed it as a huge...
The Red Nails, of
The
course,
Red
yes,
Nails as a
the-
big size graphic thing.
Yes, yes.
Oh my God, it's beautiful. It is beautiful stuff. There was a beautiful artistry, a quality of dance almost to it. I mean, it's poetic. There you go.
Wonderful.
So the films.
Yes, that's what
But
we
you see,
still owe
okay, it was
our
so funny.
viewers.
Tonight, I didn't know I was going to talk about the thing at all, but it just was a thing that came to mind straight away as being one of the all-time great films. But I had to think about this as something where, what are the films that I would, absolutely overvalue? Well, The Thing is one of them, but Ridley Scott's Blade Runner. The first film, that brilliant Blade Runner with Harrison Ford, Sean Young, Rutger Hauer, who I met. Oh my God, there's a man. And I met him at a bar getting a Guinness. I mean, it was just like being in an ad. There he was. And I'd been told, don't talk to Rutger tonight. I mean, it's a convention I'm at, and it was like, don't talk to Rutger. He's really pissed off with everybody. He's not talking to anybody. I thought, okay then. And I just wanted to meet Rutger, but I thought I'm never going to get this experience. I walk up to the bar to order my drink, and I'm ordering myself a Guinness. And who's standing beside me? A long black coat with a shock of white hair, and I'm looking. Oh my God, it's Rutger Hauer. And so I had that moment of, do I talk to him? Do I not? Because the guys have said, oh God, no, I'm talking to him. So we got talking. And I was very careful and clever. I started talking about other films he had done before I got to Blade Runner. I talked about The Hitcher and The Legend of the Holy Drinker. Oh, The Hitcher's phenomenal. There's another incredible piece of work.
And a movie that also scared me when I was little.
That his version still scares me. I mean, it's a nasty piece of work. But Blade Runner has got these incredible moments in it. There's this beautiful bit in it that always sends shivers up my spine. When Sean Young goes to the piano, Rachel, her name's right, she goes to the piano and she sits down and she starts playing these few notes. And those few notes, oh my God, some ancient lama must have devised these notes as being the perfect things to mess up your spine for good. She plays these notes and I can just feel this buzz rising up through my spine, and then Harrison Ford speaks to her and he's sitting beside her, and it's a beautiful little moment. And then the other moment, of course, that, oh my God, you just feel yourself going is where Rutger Hauer has his big moment, his end, and his little speech.
Yes.
And he's there.
Yes, wonderful.
And
powerful.
Those lines that he says, that you're sitting and you're feeling this rush through your body. And he's saying these lines, and the craziest thing was he wrote them. He wrote those lines. He asked Ridley Scott, he said, would you mind if I tried something? I've got these few lines I would like to say. And he's sitting there with a dove in his hand. And he says these lines, and the rain's coming down. And you see Rutger's got this beautiful look on his face. He's got these eyes that are, quirky, and this slight smile that he has. And he's saying this. And also the sadness. It's all there in this one little moment. And the thing that's meant to interrupt it, of course, which you only see on the director's cut version, is because the first time I saw it, he gets interrupted by Harrison Ford saying, I don't know why he had to die. And you're looking at it going, shut up! Because, why are you saying this? And the thing is, in the director's cut version, Harrison doesn't speak. There's no voiceover. So he's looking at him. He's in the same moment you are that is like, oh my God, he's dying. And I'm just going with this. And then Gaff says, you've done a man's job or something, and you're irritated by Gaff. And the look on Harrison Ford's face is he's irritated by Gaff because Gaff has pulled him out of the moment. And that's the way you're meant to be pulled out of the moment, because when Gaff speaks, it stops that feeling that you're having. That is a phenomenal thing for a piece of cinema to do that to you. That you're looking at something and it has that experience. My son, he doesn't get it because Connor saw so much of Blade Runner in all the video games that he plays. So he saw all the brilliant parts of Blade Runner and doesn't see Blade Runner. He can't look at it and actually know that that's what's
I've seen
happening.
it recently, and I've seen it at like 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
I don't know why and how, but I saw it come up on TV, and I watched it just by myself, in a dark room.
Only way to
and
watch it.
Enjoyed it
Yeah.
immensely.
But the funny thing is,
Immensely.
the way you saw it first, did you see the voiceover version or the director's cut version?
The last time I was the director's cut.
but
last time, but the first time I do not
Yeah,
remember.
because this is why it's so strange to me, because I saw the voiceover version first, and the problem with that is that's the film that I loved, even though it was the television box shape. So for me, I spent all my life wanting to see what this film was like properly, and of course, when I finally got to see it, I had this voiceover in my head because of the fact that it was so much a part of the film. But I totally appreciated the moments where the voice wasn't there when the pieces happened. Anyway, it's a brilliant film. But then I thought to myself, one of the other films that I absolutely, totally adore, because one of the things with Ridley Scott's Blade Runner is it is stunning to look at. That is a man who creates artistry on screen. It's beautiful. And there's a lot of other films that he's done that I've loved. But the thing is, Blade Runner is unique. And I don't want the second movie. I've seen it twice, once in the cinema, once at home on DVD. And the problem is, it explains too much about everything. The great thing about the original Blade Runner is it doesn't explain anything. I mean, it leaves you hanging. And yes, everybody has the answers, but the fact is it doesn't give you the answers strictly. It leaves you wondering what the answers are. Right. And that's so much better than something telling you, this is a robot, this is another one, this is an android, this is maybe something else. There could be a human in there may not be a human. Oh, look, there's a whole bunch of guys like The Matrix that are coming out at the end of the movie so that you can have a third film. Oh, God, no. Anyway, first film, lovely. It's like the first Matrix. I wouldn't want to see the other two anymore, the other three. The first one was phenomenal, and it ends at a point that leaves you, that's it, I love this movie. Perfect. Do not give me the CGI versions that came afterwards. Anyway, the other film I have to say is Sergio Leone's Once Upon a Time in the West. Now, The Good, the Bad and the Ugly is fantastic, Fistful of Dollars is fantastic, For a Few Dollars More is fantastic. But Once Upon a Time in the West is almost like a culmination of so many things to do with Sergio Leone. And the landscape in that film is incredible. The opening sequence in that film is mind-bogglingly incredible. You have to, I guess you shouldn't have to like Westerns to like it, but it is the most brilliant Western. Mm-hmm. But don't not watch it just because it's a Western. When you see these characters waiting for the arrival of Charles Bronson, and this was in the days when I loved Charles Bronson. He did some great stuff.
He's really famous in Yugoslavia.
Oh, because he is he from there? Is he?
No,
he's Bershulsky or something, his name, wasn't it? Anyway, point is, the opening sequence, which is very long, and they're waiting for the train to come to town.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And the guys are waiting, these three guys, and the train comes to town, and then the train moves on. And there's the one guy standing across the railway track, and you hear the harmonica playing, and you're looking through the legs of the guys that are waiting for him. And you have a little bit of conversation. You have the greatest shootout, and also the behind the scenes information about that is even more interesting. But anyway, they have the shootout, and then you get into this whole story. And the next sequence, I think, is where there's this little family living in their place out in the desert, and they're getting ready for the arrival of their new mother. And suddenly people get shot, and out of the sagebrush walk these figures with big long duster coats. And oh my God, you suddenly realize it's Henry Fonda. And Henry Fonda was always a classic hero. He's not this guy. This is the bad guy. This is one of the worst, most evil Western characters. And it's Henry Fonda with these eyes, these blue eyes looking out of this flipping sunburnt face. And it's amazing. And not only is he really bad there, a guy asks him, what do we do with the kid, Frank? Because there's only a kid left. And Frank says, well, now that you mention me by name. them. And it's like, Jesus, what have I just seen? Henry Fonda has done the worst thing ever. Anyway, and then the next scene is, I think, is where the train comes into the town that's being built, and you hear this beautiful music playing, and out of the train comes Claudia Cardinal. And it is the most beautiful Italian woman in the world coming walking out, a North African, she's half and half anyway. She comes walking out of the train and you're in love. That's it, you're totally in love. And this movie has lots of scenes in it that build up the story and the relationship between all these people. And I think I might have to have that over Blade Runner only because it's much longer. So it gives you a lot more to watch.
Well, speaking of which, we've run out of time well. Speaking of things we love you here, William Simpson in Helsinki, and we're slowly running. Actually, we went a little bit over time, but that's amazing. Here we are trying something new here with the Helsinki Street Festival as well. Thank you for these wonderful insights. Thank you for sharing this with the crowd out there, and thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw, if you'd like to see more content, please like, subscribe, and share. Our channel is HSF, that stands for Helsinki Strip Festival. We'll try to bring you much more of this content. It's a place where we host people like William and that we enjoy talking about comic books, movies, music, and all things pop culture.
There's so much to talk about, isn't there?
When it comes to this wonderful town. Thank you so much again. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Excellent.